Okay, I am live. I'm gonna wait and see if a few more people join in here. You'll have to bear with me. This is my first time ever doing a Facebook Live, so I apologize if there are any snafus. As we're going through different topics, feel free to message me on Facebook. You can message directly on the Facebook Live feed, or you can post anywhere on my page, and I will try to answer questions as best I can. And again, I'm just waiting a few minutes here. I know there were a lot of people who were signed up who wanted to see this, so I want to make sure that as many people can see this as wanted to. So let's just wait a second here. Okay. So, for those of you who do not know me, I am attorney Stacy Schlemmer. I'm an attorney practicing family law in Green Bay and Appleton, Wisconsin. I practice in pretty much all of the eastern side of the state, and I work at Peterson, Berk Cross, which is located in Green Bay and Appleton, Wisconsin. I am licensed to practice in Wisconsin. So if there is anyone watching who is from a different state, some of what I say can apply to you, but I am only licensed to practice in Wisconsin, so I'm going to be speaking to Wisconsin law specifically. And if you have any questions, like I said before, feel free to message on the live feed, or you can message on my Facebook page, Stacy J. Schlemmer, Attorney at Law. And I have that up on my computer so I can try to keep track of any new messages or posts that come in over the course of the day. And why I decided to just do a Facebook Live event tonight is I have been getting so many messages from single and divorced parents or parents who are going through a divorce currently, and everybody has questions about how this coronavirus and the quarantines and the mandates coming down from the government, how these all tie in with basically with the placement schedules. And one of the main questions that people have is, do I still have to follow my placement schedules? Now, anything that I tell you today, just to be clear, I am not representing you in any way. This Facebook event does not create an attorney-client privilege, does not create an attorney-client relationship. There is no duty of confidentiality here. I don't know who's all watching right now, so there's definitely not any sort of a attorney-client relationship here, and this is not a consultation with any of you individually. And if you want to set up a consultation to go into more detail with your case specifically, you can definitely do that. You can call my office and set up a free consultation, but that's not what today is for. Today, I'm just trying to give some general information so that you can have a little bit of guidance going out there and living under this current state of craziness that we find ourselves in, and B, that you can find information that you might need or want to have available to you moving forward. So, the main question, like I said before, that I've been asked is, do I have to follow the current placement schedule that I have in place, even if I'm self-quarantining, or if my kids are off of school, or if my business closes, or the governor issues a stay-at-home order? And long story short, yes, you likely need to follow your placement schedule. An order is an order is an order, and they're there for a reason. Now, that being said, there are always different reasons that you can get out of an order or get basically forgiveness for violating an order. But long story short, in most cases, you're going to need to be following your placement schedule that's in your court order. One of the questions that's been coming up is, well, with a stay-at-home order or directive from the governor, can I leave my house to go do a placement exchange? Yes, you can still leave your house. It's not a house arrest that you're under, where the governor says nobody can leave their house. It's just for non-essential reasons, that you shouldn't be just going out shopping for no reason, or going and just, I don't know, going into busy places or being places you don't need to be. Now, in my opinion, placement or a placement schedule is an essential need for being outside or going for a drive or interacting with the other parent. In most situations for a placement exchange, you're either meeting at the other parent's house or you're meeting at a Quick Trip gas station or a McDonald's or something like that. And that's it. You're not going to a shopping mall and talking to 500 people while you're doing a placement exchange. And if you want to stay within the bounds of the governor's mandates or whatever comes down from the government, that's an easy way to do it. Talk to the other parent. Shocker, I know a lot of people don't like to communicate. You need to communicate. This is a new situation for everybody. There isn't a lot of precedent, if any, for a situation like this. And you and the other parent need to figure out what's going to work. So if you're taking the kid from your house to the other parent's house for a placement exchange, and you literally just drop the kid off at the other parent's house and you pull out of the driveway and go home, you're fine. You're not violating any mandates. You're not violating any laws by doing that placement exchange. Even if there's a stay-at-home order out there by the governor, that's not a violation, okay? So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that, and you should be doing your placement exchanges like you always have been. But like I said before, there's always the question of, well, what if my ex is in the medical field and I don't feel comfortable sending the kid over there because they're supposed to be self-quarantining? Again, you need to talk with the other parent. Figure this stuff out. Most medical professionals are self-quarantining because they are at higher risk, especially if they're exposed to a lot of patients who might have coronavirus, or they're in a place, if they're in a hospital or a clinic where people are coming in to get tested. Be reasonable with each other. This isn't rocket science. Your parents, you created these kids together. You need to get through this together, and don't make each other's lives a living hell doing it. It doesn't have to be that way. If you are in the healthcare profession and you are self-quarantining and you don't want to risk your kid or kids contracting anything that you might be carrying, whether it's coronavirus, the flu, whatever, then just take 14 days off, work with the other parent to try to get some makeup time set out for when this stuff passes, or when you feel confident that you're not a carrier of anything, things like that. You don't have to do that. This is just a suggestion. Another suggestion is, and this relates to, where parents are saying they're going to be withholding placement for the other parent. The golden rule applies here. How would you like it if the shoe was on the other foot? And the other parent was saying, I have the kid, I'm not sending him to you. What if you want to treat the other parent the way you want to be treated? If you don't want the kid withheld from you, don't withhold the kid from the other parent. Now, again, reasonable minds need to prevail here. If you are symptomatic, or you have somebody in your house that is symptomatic, you don't want your kids to get sick. So let the other parent keep the kids, okay? That's just common sense. I don't think for a minute that parents out there are withholding the kids only because they want to stick it to the other parent. I'm sure that happens, but it's because you're concerned for the kids, you're concerned for their well-being, you're concerned for their health. So I get it, but you need to be reasonable about it on both sides. If you start to get symptoms, or you work in a high-risk profession or something where you could contract this coronavirus easily, think about that before you demand that the kids come over to your house. Is it truly in the best interest of the kids to come to your house at this point? Okay, the other parents who aren't sending the kids just for being vindictive, that's going to come back to bite you. Okay, I'm a firm believer in karma. The courts are not going to be happy with people who are using this as an opportunity to keep the kids from the other parent for no good reason. One thing I wanted to point out to you guys, I know that people have been asking, what do I do if the other parent is just unreasonably refusing to send the kids with me? And what you can do, the courts aren't completely shut down. You can still file court actions in the circuit courts, okay? So if you're in Wisconsin, what you would file is a motion for contempt if somebody is not filing a court order. That's what you do. You file a motion for contempt because somebody is not following a court order. Now, the forms are available online if you want to file the forms on your own without an attorney. For those of you taking notes, if what you do is you do a Google search for Wisconsin Circuit Court Forms Bank. You click on the first link. You're going to find all of the forms that are for any type of case you want to file. You're going to look for family court forms. You're going to look at post-judgment because you already have a court order in place. And then you're going to search for motion for contempt. There will be a motion for contempt and there will be an affidavit. It may be labeled as an order to show cause for contempt. That's the same thing. And that's the form that you would fill out and file with the court to be able to reserve a court date for a motion or an order to show cause for contempt. Just because you might have to wait a few weeks to get into court to have that hearing doesn't mean that the other parent should just get away with violating the court order for no good reason, okay? Now, the statute, if you're really bored and you want to look for something really fun to read, you can look up Wisconsin Statute 767.471. It's a great read. Just kidding. Even lawyers don't like reading statutes. But that's the Enforcement of Physical Placement Order statute. So if you want to read what that statute specifically says and what it requires of parents, that's where you look. So just to read you a blip from that statute, it says that if the court finds that the responding party, meaning the person who had the contempt filed on them, if the responding party has intentionally and unreasonably denied the moving party, meaning the person who filed, one or more periods of physical placement, or that the responding party has interfered with more than one or more of the moving party's periods of placement, then the court shall, meaning the court has to, issue an order granting additional periods of placement to replace those denied or interfered with, and award the filing party a reasonable amount for the cost of maintaining an action under this section and for attorney fees. So, in plain English, what that means is if you can show the court that the other parent unreasonably and intentionally denied or withheld placement that you were supposed to get under a court order, you can get not only attorney's fees awarded to you for having to file a motion for contempt, but you can also get costs, so cost of service, things like that, and you can get replacement periods of placement. So, the key word, however, to keep in mind is the court has to find that the responding party has unreasonably denied placement. That's what you really have to focus on if you're proving that up in court. Was it unreasonable? Right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so reasonableness is it's in the eye of the beholder. I don't know what the courts are going to say. I'm not a judge, I'm not a commissioner. When you go in for a motion for contempt, you're going to be in front of a commissioner and a judge. And it's up to the commissioner or the judge what they find as reasonable. And reasonable minds differ, so you have to put on a good case to show that it's unreasonable. So some things that you might want to do if a parent is texting you or calling you and saying, I'm not sending the kids, I don't like you, this is my chance, I have the kids now, so haha, you're not going to see the kids for 3 weeks. You need to be creating a record of your conversations with this other parent. Asking if you can have makeup placement time later. Asking, what you can do to get that other parent to agree to give you placement. Things like that. The more you can show that you are trying to work with the other parent and it's the other parent who's being unreasonable, that will help you. So just create that record. The court's going to rely on written documentation whenever they can. It helps them. That's what they're going to rely on. I'm just trying to read through. I'm getting a lot of messages here. Oh, that's an interesting question. Should people that have a school schedule and a summer schedule stay on the school schedule or revert to a summer schedule? So before the family courts all went to just by phone or rescheduling for weeks down the road, what I saw happening with hearings that I had was that the court would say that the summer placement schedule would kick in when the kids would normally be done with school. Now, that being said, again, different courts, different commissioners can have different opinions on that. And if the parents agree otherwise, the parents can do what they want. The court doesn't care. The court isn't going to call you up and say, hey, are you guys following the court order? Or, hey, do you need my help on something? If the parents talk and they communicate and they say, hey, the kids aren't in school, we're both off of work, do you want to just switch to the summer placement schedule? And the parents agree on it, great. If you don't agree on it, look at possibly doing, okay, when was the last day of school supposed to be? Is that when we're going to kick this in? Because that's what would have normally happened if this whole pandemic wasn't going on. So that's my suggestion on that. But again, courts could have a different opinion on it. By the time you get in for a motion to enforce the placement schedule or to try to get some feedback, the kids would probably be out of school already anyway, and you'd already be on that summer schedule. I can't guarantee it, but right now it seems like the courts are scheduling into May and June for hearings because they're just pushing things out far enough to hopefully get past the worst of this virus. Let's see. So I'm getting some questions about, again, people who work in healthcare in the medical field. Use your best judgment. Like I said before, if you're in the ER or if you're working as a CNA or a registered nurse and you are in the front lines and you are more susceptible to getting this coronavirus and you know it and you're self-quarantining or you're supposed to be self-quarantining, question whether it's worth it to put the kids at risk. If you really want to push it and have the kids with you and you don't believe there's any risk, that's your call. The other parent, again, you need to show that they're being unreasonable in failing to give you the child for your placement periods. If you can show that you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing and you're self-quarantining and you're doing everything that you're supposed to and the other parent's just being unreasonable, there you go. You have to file your motion to enforce placement or a motion for contempt. They're pretty much the same thing. A motion for contempt, you can ask for attorney fees and sanctions. So that's usually what I prefer personally. And a motion for contempt, it usually will catch somebody's attention a lot faster because nobody wants to be in contempt of court. The courts do not, they don't enjoy those hearings at all by any stretch. Okay, let's see, what other questions? Oh, so someone had asked, we've heard that these essential versus non-essential employers, that some businesses are going to stay open, some aren't. I had a question today. A former client of mine asked whether he could have the placement withheld from him because he was still going into work, whereas the other parent was not. And the other parent was saying, well, you're going into work, you're still risking yourself, you're still susceptible to catching this coronavirus, I'm not sending the kids. Well, that's not exactly right. That's not fair. Again, if she was on the other foot, how would you feel? Just because someone is still going into work doesn't mean they're going to be carrying this virus. It doesn't mean that they're going to be symptomatic. It doesn't mean that they're going to pass anything to the kid. As long as everybody is taking precautions to make sure that the kids don't get sick and to make sure that they're sanitizing and they're, using antibacterial wipes everywhere, you have to be reasonable at some point. If the flu was going around and you didn't want to send the kids because of the flu, it's the same concept with placement, whether it's the flu or this virus. It's something, nobody wants their kids to catch this, okay? I think that's a given. So just be reasonable, and you have to have some level of trust that the other parent is going to do what they can to make sure that the kid or kids don't catch this virus. Hopefully you can have that that at least minimal amount of trust in the other parent to know that they're doing what they have to do and what they should be doing to keep the kids safe. But just because someone owns a bar and grill that has takeout available and they have to go in and work it, or they're working in a fabrication plant or production facility and they have to keep going in, that doesn't mean that they're carrying the virus. That doesn't mean that they're actively and willfully giving the kid the virus. If they're doing everything that they can and taking precautions, they're doing what they have to be doing. In my opinion, that's reasonable. But again, if you want to take that risk and withhold the kids and hope that the court agrees that it was reasonable to do that, okay, but that's going to be your call. And then you have to realize that you're likely going to be ordered to give the other parent make-up placement time for any periods of placement that were denied to the other parent. Let's see. If the parent is using the pandemic to keep the kids for 2 weeks, even though they weren't in a high-risk area, is it reasonable? Okay, so the question is, if the parent is using the pandemic to keep the kids for 2 weeks, even though they weren't in a high-risk area, is it reasonable for the other parent to ask for a full 2 weeks with their kids to make up that 2 weeks? Well, I can give you my opinion, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not the judge or commissioner that's going to be deciding your case if you take it to court for a motion for contempt. So, I mean, I don't know what of those 2 weeks would be the other parent's actual placement time. That's what the parent would get as makeup time. It wouldn't be just the amount of time in total. It would be how many days the other parent was supposed to have placement that they didn't get placement because somebody was withholding that. Okay, does that make sense? So if out of the 2 weeks, one parent was supposed to have 7 days, but the other parent withheld those 7 days, the non-placement parent, meaning the parent that the placement was denied to, should get their 7 days back that they were denied. So they wouldn't necessarily get the full 2 weeks if half of those 2 weeks belonged to the parent who actually did have the kids. Hopefully that makes sense. So I don't know, does anybody else have any questions, concerns, stuff that I'm not bringing up that you want me to bring up? Are there other questions that are out there? I know that there has been talk about non-essential travel over the border meaning just state borders. Obviously international, but more so state would be something that might come up. Being in Green Bay, we're fairly close to the border to the UP in Michigan. And some parents might live on the other side of the border. Again, I am of the position that placement is essential travel and that you just limit your interactions with anybody outside of your family, meaning the other parent or the kid that you're exchanging. So I think that would still apply and that you should still be doing that even if they say don't do any non-essential travel. Let's see. So someone had asked, to have a little bit more information about possible sanctions for contempt. So when you're found in contempt of court, the commissioners and the judges don't like that. They expect their orders to be followed. So if they find you in contempt of court, they can order all sorts of things. They can order you to pay the other person's attorney's fees. They can order you to pay a fine. They can order you to sit in jail. They can order the makeup placement time that we talked about, things like that. So you have to weigh the risk. Is it worth the risk to be found in contempt and have possible sanctions against you? If you really in your heart of hearts believe that you're not being unreasonable, again, it's your call. But I would ask that you consider what it would be like if you were the other parent and you were not getting the kids that you were expecting to have for your placement time. This is right now, it's a great time to be able to have that extra one-on-one time with your kids, to be able to be outside or do schoolwork together or whatever. So to just withhold that from another parent willy-nilly for no real reason, except that you don't like them, that's not a good reason. I do not see that holding up in court at all. I see someone said they don't have custody and placement set yet. So if you are one of those people who has perhaps filed for divorce, you're separated now, but you haven't gotten into court for a temporary order hearing or a final hearing on custody and placement, you're going to have to work with the other parent somehow. See if you can reach an agreement on what a placement schedule is going to look like. Try to play nice, be reasonable. Again, especially if you're going through a divorce, at some point in time, you got along, you loved each other enough to get married and have babies. So I would hope that you could step back and look at the situation and figure out what's best for the kids. And is withholding placement with the other parent best for the kids? Not usually. Now, there are always extenuating circumstances. Maybe there's an abusive other parent or whatever, a deadbeat parent on the other side. I get that. But you really need to think about what's best for the kids in situations like these. And going for 2 or 3 weeks without seeing the other parent is going to be tough. And if you're in a situation where you're self-quarantining or you have symptoms or something like that, work with the other parent to see if you can set up regularly occurring Skype dates with the kids or Facebook Messenger, video chats where you can chat with the kids and at least stay interacting with them and communicating with them. Make sure that they know you're okay, you know they're okay. And just keep that relationship going. Just because you're self-quarantining or you are medically required to isolate yourself because you're symptomatic or you're actually diagnosed, that doesn't mean that you have to be cut off completely from your family or your kids. Hopefully you have somebody on the other side who understands this and understands the importance of the kids maintaining a relationship with you. And the same should go for the other way. If it's the other parent who's diagnosed or has symptoms or whatever, work with that parent. Think of how you would want to be treated. So offer them time with the kids, whether it's on Facebook or Skype or whatever, where you guys can talk. All right, so let's see. Can the parent who isn't following the court order be charged with kidnapping? Okay, that's one that keeps coming up as well. Now, good luck with that. I'm not guessing that that's going to be coming up a lot with the local police or sheriff's department. They're not going to be going around charging parents with kidnapping in the middle of a pandemic. Does that mean that it's right to keep the kids from the other parent? No. What's your best recourse? Well, you can call the police and say you have a court order and you want them to enforce it. And it's up to whoever you call, who you happen to get on the phone, whether they're going to do something about it or not. In my opinion, the police should be stepping in and helping enforce placement schedules that are a part of a court order, but it doesn't always happen. If you get that unfortunate result and you don't get any help from the police, then, like I said, you can file a motion to enforce placement or a contempt motion to try to get some court action and at least preserve your right to go to court to ask for make-up placement time and to have that other parent held in contempt and let them know that it's not okay to just unilaterally violate a court order with no good reason. But again, you have the burden of proof if you're the one filing for a motion for contempt or a motion to enforce physical placement to show if there's, possible contempt that the other parent is being unreasonable in denying you placement. Okay. I really doubt, like I said, I doubt that anybody would charge anybody with kidnapping right now. If they're saying that they're a parent and it's in the kid's best interest, the police are probably going to say handle it in court or handle it between the two of you. Okay, I have another question. When I go to pick up my children from my ex's house, if he refuses to let them come out to my vehicle, what can I do? Well, hopefully in the future, talk to the other parent first and give them a heads up that, hey, I'm coming over. Please make sure the kids are ready to go. You can have them run out to my car, or if the kids are too young and you have to go to the door and get them, just so that there's no surprise. I'm not sure what your placement schedule says, but just so that the other person is aware that you're coming, when you're coming, and to have the kids ready to go. If your ex just doesn't send the kids and you're sitting in the driveway and you're texting or you're calling and they're either not responding or they're refusing to send the kids out, again, you want to try to get stuff in writing. So if there's a text message or an email where they're saying, I'm not sending the kids with you, you're a horrible person and that's it, and there's no real reason for it, then you want to save that, obviously, save that communication. But then, yes, I would suggest that you contact the police in a situation like that, because the police are supposed to be law enforcing. They're supposed to be helping enforce court orders. That's why we have detailed court orders, and why I always recommend to my clients that you have detailed court orders with specific start and end times and locations and who's going to be transporting and things like that, because it makes it a lot easier for a police officer to see clearly mom has placement at 5 p.m. on Monday, and that it's 5:30 and the kids still haven't come out of dad's house. Clearly something's going on there. I have seen it where the police will just call the other parent and tell them that they need to comply with the court order. And usually that'll do the trick. It doesn't always, it's not a given, but it is something that does come up. But like I said before, it kind of depends on your jurisdiction, where you happen to call. Some police departments are more willing to get involved in placement disputes than others. But that's what I would suggest you do. The problem is you can't obviously go bang the door down to go get your kids if the other parent just says they're not going to send the kids and the police don't do anything. Then you're left with the option of filing something with the court to at least get it addressed that way. So I know that's not a great option, but that's what I'm aware of that's out there, and that's what I would suggest you do. So I see some other questions about not wanting to go for placement. It doesn't look like it's related to the coronavirus, and it's just a question about feeling safe at the other parent's house. What I would suggest you do is you set up a consultation with either myself or any of the other very qualified family attorneys in town, because that's a very specific question, it sounds like, and there's probably a lot of layers to that. And I don't want to get into that on this chat, this live where there's 54 people watching. I don't want to get into your personal business on here. I would suggest that you, again, call my office or call one of the other family attorneys in town and just set up a free consultation to know what your rights and options are. You can always request a motion to modify placement or something like that if it's appropriate. Let's see here. What else do we have here? So, someone was asking or saying that we have a set placement schedule and exchange time, but he often tries to keep them and keeps them, stating he doesn't want them with me because I work in the schools. Well, right now it's my understanding that schools are shut down, or closed. So that should be a non-issue. And if he is still keeping the kids from you, again, you have the options that we've already talked about with either contacting the police or filing an action with the court. And I'm not sure if everybody was on here when I gave the information about where to go to get the court forms, but if anybody needs to go file a motion for contempt or an order to cause or a motion to enforce physical placement, you just do a Google search for Wisconsin Circuit Court Forms Bank. You click on the first link, and that will take you to different forms that you can choose. You want to go to the family court forms, and then you want to go to post-judgment forms, and you're going to find your forms in there that you need to file. And those you can file on your own. They make them very user-friendly. If you do want an attorney to help you fill out those forms or to represent you with a case like that, my office does that. We have 3 family attorneys who are all very familiar with these proceedings and can easily help you. And there are also plenty of excellent family attorneys in the area who would be able to help you with that also. But if you wanted to file it on your own, just to get things moving, you can absolutely do that on your own. The instructions are on the forms. They tried to make it very user-friendly for pro se litigants. So that's where you would want to go for that. Let me see. What other questions here? If one parent decides they want to self-quarantine, does the other parent have to agree? I'm not sure. Is the parent who wants to self-quarantine, are they wanting to self-quarantine with the kids? So that they're saying, I'm going to quarantine myself and I have the kids, so they're going to stay with me now because we're all self-quarantining and you don't get to see them? Or are you saying that the other parent wants to self-quarantine and not have the kids with them? I guess I just want some clarification on that. If the other parent wants to self-quarantine, the other parent doesn't really get a say. I mean, if they want to self-quarantine, they can self-quarantine. There's nothing saying they can't, and the other parent doesn't really have a say. However, one parent can't just all of a sudden claim, I want to self-quarantine, I'm going to keep the kids with me, and you don't get to have any replacement time. In my opinion, that's going a step too far, and that would be possible contempt. But again, there's all these, little nuances where things can be a little different depending on what your specific case situation is. So I'm not sure what you were asking for specifically in that question. If you want me to answer that a little better or more in detail, just shoot another message on the group feed there, and I will answer that as best I can. And I'm sorry if I missed some questions. As we've been going through these, I know some of them I've already scrolled through. If I missed your question, or if you still have other questions, feel free to add to the chat here. I'm going to go and see if anybody posted anything else on the page here. And I don't think so. Yeah, so I hope that this has been helpful. Bottom line is we're all in uncharted territory here. This doesn't happen that often. So bottom line is be decent to each other, be respectful, don't be mean just to be mean. Think of what's best for the kids. So don't be selfish in keeping the kids in withholding placement, but also don't be selfish and ask for the kids or force the kids to come over if you are high risk, or you might be contagious. If you got to use your brain here. God gave you a brain for a reason. You need to use it, and you also need to communicate with the other parent. Communication is key. I know it's not always the easiest thing. I know that a lot of people don't get along with the other parent, but really you just need to do what you can. Golden rule, do unto others as you want done to you. Be decent. And if you have any other questions, you can feel free to contact me via Facebook, or you can call my office. My number is 920-831-0300. You can always call and schedule a free consultation. If you have a specific situation that you want to run by me, I'm more than happy to set up a consult. Right now, everything's being done by phone because of this virus that we're all talking about. But I can still at least give you some feedback and maybe some suggestions on what you can do to make your situation a little more livable. I see there's a couple more questions that came through here. If court has been canceled due to this virus, do all orders get extended to the rescheduled hearing? Yes, typically an order will stay in place until it is either changed by a future hearing or rescinded, or if the parties reach a stipulation and order and that gets signed by the court, that would become the new order to take over for the past order. So hopefully that made sense, that yes, an order would stay in place until you can get back into court. Let's see if I can read the rest of this. So I know people have been asking me, like, is this out of line? Is this reasonable? Am I being unreasonable? I can't tell you. I can't give you legal advice on this Facebook Live. I don't know enough about you guys' cases by just a quick question on Facebook. So, I can give you my 2 cents on whether I think something is reasonable. That's not going to hold up in court. If somebody files a motion for contempt against you, your defense is not going to work if you say, well, I watched a Facebook Live video by this attorney and she said that it was reasonable, so I should win this. I don't want any of you to use that as a reason to justify behavior or to try to get out of contempt if you're not following a court order when you should be. And if you're being unreasonable, you gotta think about what other people would think looking in on your situation. Do you think that other people would see it as reasonable or unreasonable? Maybe ask some friends of yours. Okay, here's the situation. Do you think I'm being reasonable or unreasonable? And don't go to just your yes friends that are always going to agree with you no matter what. Go to your friends who are going to tell you whether you like it or not. So I'm sorry, I can't, like I said, I could tell you, but it's not going to hold a lot of water. You just got to try to be as reasonable as you can. And like I said, reasonable is up to, it's in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, and reasonable minds differ on what reasonable means. And that's why, that's part of why lawyers exist, because we can argue pretty much anything, and we can argue what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. And just, if you are going to be withholding placement and you feel like you have a good reason, it's the same as for the other side. You got to document stuff. You have to have a reason why you feel that you're in the right. Explain that to the other parent. Offer them makeup placement time. Offer them other suggestions like, hey, I know you work in the ER. I know you're around these sick people all the time. How about we just work out makeup placement time? And how about for right now, you just do Skype and Facebook videos, and I'll make sure that the kids are, sending you cards or whatever, stuff like that. As long as you're not being a complete jerk to the other parent and you're trying to work with them and be reasonable, again, that word reasonable, but as long as you're doing things like that, I think you have a much better shot in court showing the commissioner that you're not being unreasonable, that you were trying to make efforts to maintain that connection with the other parent and, trying to do what's best for the kids. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, if someone provides in-home childcare, can the other parent refuse to give your kids back? I'm not sure what that means. I think that falls under everything else that we've been talking about. If the other parent can refuse to give your kids back, a parent can refuse to give the kids back, it doesn't make it right. And they would have to justify their actions in court in a motion for contempt hearing or an order to show cause hearing or a motion to enforce placement hearing. All of those hearings, you have to show a reasonable basis for why you're withholding placement. And if that other parent can't show that, they're going to be found in contempt of court, and you're likely going to get makeup placement time. But again, document. If you're having email conversations or text conversations, make sure that you're keeping screenshots of those conversations so that you can print them off and bring them to court if you need to for a hearing. What if you have a restraining order against the other parent? You have to communicate the way you've been communicating with the parent. If you have a placement schedule in place, there must have been some way that you were communicating with the other parent for placement exchanges. If you have to have a third party facilitate the transportation, if it has to be, a new significant other, a new spouse, a grandparent, whatever, you can do it that way. If the kids are old enough to just hop out of the car when you get to the other person's house, you can always just do curbside pickup or exchange, as we call it, where you just pull up in front of the house of the other parent, the kids hop out, you drive away. That way there's no violation of any restraining orders, and you don't have to worry about getting too close to the other parent that you don't want to be communicating with. Sometimes with restraining orders, they'll have, as part of an order, that you would communicate by Our Family Wizard, which is an excellent communication app that a lot of courts will order in a restraining order situation if there is a placement schedule and there are children and the parents need to communicate, but there's a restraining order. So I don't know if that's your situation, but if it is, that's how you would need to, continue communicating with the other parent if there's some sort of an exclusion in that restraining order. Is court being canceled, or are they doing some cases by phone? It depends on the county. Most of the counties in northeastern Wisconsin have been rescheduling completely. For a while there, for the last 2 weeks maybe, they were trying to do hearings by phone, and some of them are still doing hearings by phone, especially like scheduling conferences, status conferences, things like that. But it's really hard for hearings where you're supposed to be taking testimony or you're supposed to be presenting exhibits and evidence. You can't really do that over the phone very easy, if at all. So a lot of the hearings are simply being pushed out. If you had a hearing scheduled, it's like, I would say, if you have a hearing that's supposed to be happening in March or April, March hearings are almost all rescheduled at this point, unless they can be by phone. April hearings are even getting rescheduled now. So keep an eye on CCAP if you have a case, because you're likely going to get rescheduled, or it's going to be by phone if you have a March or April hearing. After that, I think they're being a little more cautious, and they're starting to schedule things into May and June, hoping that things will get back to normal by then. But they've told us as attorneys to be prepared that we might have to reschedule again if this stuff hasn't all cleared up by then. Because obviously they want to protect people coming into court. They don't want to send you into a bunch of infected people and then say, hey, come to court, you have to be here, and I don't care if you get sick or not. They're doing what they can to try to protect us, which is nice. So let's see. Anybody else have any other questions about anything? Feel free. I'm going to quick check on my other page. It looks like I might have some more questions that were posted. Okay, so again, with the order that we're expecting to come down from the governor, with the stay at home mandate, that does not mean that you cannot leave your house. That is not house arrest. So you need to be working with the other parent, and you should still be transporting the children back and forth for placement, in my opinion. If you were meeting at a Quick Trip or something and you don't want to meet at a Quick Trip anymore because you're worried about germs or the virus spreading, just meet at the other person's house then. It doesn't have to be a permanent solution. It can just be while this is all going on until it cools down. I think that's completely reasonable. And that way you stay away from other people. You keep the kids from having to interact with other people, and you can either do the curbside pickup, or you can just, bring the kid up to the front door of dad's house, and dad can bring the kids up to the front door at mom's house, and just work together, be decent to each other. And, we'll get through this. Hopefully this is just very temporary, and with everybody hopefully staying home and hunkering down for the next couple of weeks, this will pass, and then we can all get back to the crazy normal lives that we all enjoy so much, and get back into court. But you do have the options for the contempt motion, like I said before. I explained to you where to find the forms. After we're done with this Facebook Live, I will post the link on my Facebook page, Stacey J. Schlemmer, Attorney at Law, so that you can utilize that if you want to file a motion for contempt or a motion to enforce physical placement. I'll put the link on there for you. So I see people popping on and off. Has anybody popped on that has any questions that I haven't asked, or anybody who's been watching who really has a question that they don't really know what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing with the kids, with the other parent, whatever you want to ask? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave you guys with some free legal advice, I guess, is just abide by the golden rule and everything will be much better for you. I know that not everybody gets along with their exes, and there's a reason you're exes. But usually in my practice, parents are genuinely concerned about the welfare of their kids, and they genuinely love their kids. So if you put the kids first, you can figure this stuff out. You're the adults, you're the parents, you can figure this out. It's just a temporary thing that you guys have to get through and work together. Try to communicate as much as you can. Don't frustrate or annoy the other parent, but try to communicate. It'll help things. If you need an attorney, you can always feel free to reach out to me. Again, I'm at Peterson, Berk Cross. We're located in Green Bay and Appleton. We offer a free 30-minute consultation. I have 2 fellow family attorneys who work at my office, Devin Shanley and Angela Bolter, and both of them are very experienced and good litigators in family law. So we're all here willing to help. We do offer a free consultation, 920-831-0300. All of the information is available on my Facebook page. So hopefully this helped. If you have other questions that you think of later, feel free to message me. Just shoot me a message on Facebook and I'll get back to you when I can. Or you can always call and leave a voicemail for me at work too. And I'll get back to you when I can. Okay? Thank you for joining me. We'll be in touch. Bye.